Coming up next, we have a captivating panel discussion titled The Leadership Renaissance: Inspiring Collaboration and Cultivating Motivation in the Modern Workplace. Our panel will delve into the art of promoting collaboration and igniting motivation. Get ready to uncover innovative strategies and real life antidotes that will revolutionize your approach to leadership in today's fast paced workplace. To enlighten us on this, I would like to invite our moderator, Paul Van, from professional leadership speaker at Wealth Building Academy LLC, and the rest of our panelists to the stage. Welcome.
Yes, good afternoon, and we're honored to be here at Education 2.0 Conference, and it's our pleasure to be able to support you in this endeavor. And we have four great panelists that are here. But before we get started, I just want to share a little bit about the leadership renaissance. Renaissance is defined as a French word rebirth. So what we'll be talking about today is some changes that are coming into the leadership area, not only for education, but for all industries. And so that's what we'll be talking about today. Before we get started, my name is Paul Lawrence Van, and I attended every leadership school the Air Force had to offer. I have years of experience in it. I'm the founder of Wealth Building Academy LLC, which is a leadership consultancy based in Washington, D.C., and I'm here to serve you. Now, what we're going to do, or what I'm going to do, is announce and provide the bio for each one of these individuals, and I'm honored to do so given the fact that it's Women's History Month. Give them a hand. All right, I'm going to start out with Ellie Dabibian. She is a Gallup certified Clifton Strengths coach who boosts organizational culture through strengths and engagement. She helps individuals, teams, and managers authentically deliver excellence through natural talent. She's based in Los Angeles, California, and she is also the author of the book Peak Performance. Next, I'm going to introduce Benita Bonducci. She began innovating in education as a student pioneer at the UC Santa Cruz when it was the premier higher educational experiment in the world. Her transformative gender work was born out of her entrepreneur experience pioneering businesses initiating social change on Union Square in San Francisco and her work in transformational education companies. And she teaches gender and graduate school for engineering at Santa Clara University, and she's based in Silicon Valley, California. Next, we have Malika Rahman, and she's formerly an elementary science educator and is now a middle school science educator in Los Angeles. Her career has been mainly focused in private schools within the Los Angeles and St. Louis regions. Her combination of self-motivation, her willingness to go above and beyond the classroom, and her ability to think creatively has opened her eyes to more and many types of experiences in the science for her students. She does a really great job doing so. And lastly, but not least, we have the Dr. Courtney Gotti. She holds a doctorate in educational psychology and leverages that along with her vast experiences in education and training development to support a wide variety of private and governmental entities in creating education and training solutions. Ultimately, the goal is that these solutions offer stakeholders forward-thinking initiatives and action steps to uncover and overcome barriers that impede organizational growth. And she is based in the Colorado Springs, Colorado. And so let's get started with the panelists, and we'll start with Ellie Tabibian, and she's going to share some insight from the Clifton Strength, and she's also going to provide us with that in relation to the leadership renaissance and inspiring uh, collaboration. And we're going to start out with Ellie.
Thank you for the introduction, Paul. Now, second to leaving a bad boss, do you know what is the main reason why 59% of millennials leave the workplace? Second to a bad boss. After a bad boss, what is the next reason why most millennials leave? It's not the money, no. close to purpose. It's lacking the opportunity to learn and grow. That is one of the 12 elements of engagement. Gallup has a Q12 engagement that lists 12 survey questions that make or break organizations. And that's what broke me in my first career as a school psychologist. All I knew about myself at the time that I really wanted to help. I had no idea about how I can make a big difference. I just knew I liked to help, and that was it. But when it came time to mark boxes, to label students with disabilities, I became agitated. I became quiet. I wanted to fixate on what's right with students and not what's wrong with them. I had no idea why I was obsessing with strengths at the time. And when everyone excelled in fixing the broken parts, I felt like an imposter. I could not contribute, use my voice, let alone lead other people. That led to my burnout. And it wasn't until I took the Strengths Finder assessment, now it's called Clifton Strengths, that I found the reason for my burnout and my highest potential for excellence. There's a talent called Maximizer. That was my number one. I was filtering everything through the lens of strengths, and I didn't know it. It was like the ridge of my nose, and I did not even knew I had one. How many of you are you aware of the ridge of your nose and how you lead with excellence through the lens of strengths? Most of us don't, and it's as if we're driving at nighttime without our headlights on, when you don't know what your highest potential for excellence is. Clifton Strengths, if some of you have not heard of it before, it's an assessment developed by Gallup that unlocks your highest potential of how you naturally deliver near perfect performance. We're not interested in perfection whatsoever, but something that is almost near perfect to performance. I'm going to lead a story with you guys, and I'm going to hand it over. University of Nebraska did a study on 1,000 high school students' reading speed and comprehension for 3 years. Average readers started at 90 words per minute. Average readers started at 90 words per minute, and with reading training, they went up to 150 words per minute. Gifted readers started at 350 words per minute. Guess how high they went with reading training? Take a guess, any number. 500, higher. 5,000. I like the number you came with because it is quite high, not quite 5,000, 2,900 words per minute. They went up by an increase of 828%. That's what happens when you leverage in areas of natural talent than in your weakness. So everybody, you are not meant to be well-rounded, because if you try to be well-rounded, you'll become like a blah. You don't want to be a blah in life. You are more like a star with peaks and edges of talent. Find out who you are through the lens of strengths and do more of that, and manage around your weaknesses so they don't get in the way of your strengths and success. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Next, we'll go to Benita Banducci, and she's going to share insight on collaboration as a part of the Leadership Renaissance.
I'm very much an advocate of understanding strengths and as a source for collaboration. So it's not just about my understanding my strengths, but what about the strengths of others? How can we understand our different strengths and work together? Now, my specialty, it was birthed out of my work in my store and restaurant on Union Square, the first restaurant reviewed in Vogue magazine and Interior Design magazine, and the store was the heart of Union Square in San Francisco. And I was curious, does it have anything to do with my being a woman? And eventually, after working also with transformational education companies, I decided I wanted to really research this, because I really identified with a lot of what the management gurus were saying at the time. Building your company around your customer, building products around your customer, managing chaos. And ultimately, Peter Senge's book on the Fifth Discipline, talking about how we need to have a systems way of managing and taking on what needs to be taken on, more of a holistic way, not a mechanical systems way. And it was at that time that I had the opportunity to do research at Sun Microsystems, then one of the largest tech companies in the world. One of the vice presidents had wanted an offsite for his executives on what is the contribution women make that could be the strategic advantage in the global marketplace. And I had the opportunity to interview, gain qualitative data. And it was Carol Bartz, who was then second in command in charge of worldwide operations, that I interviewed and asked, what is it that you bring to the executive team that wouldn't be there if you weren't there? The first thing she said was, I don't consider it to be my gender. And I really feel that this is something that women often don't know, that they don't know what they know. But she said, what I do bring is the ability to see all the different ramifications of a given issue. For the most part, the men will take the highest priority problem, the highest priority solution, put the solution against the problem, and fight any fires that happen. She said, I like to prevent fires and look at all the ramifications of an issue. Now, for me, that was the big aha. Wow, this is it. That's systems thinking. And she called it fire prevention. And within about 15 seconds, she added, for this, I'm considered to be not a team player. Now, why would she be considered to be not a team player? Yes? Anyone? Okay, well, pardon me? She's playing with fire. Well, you might say so from the standpoint of instead of putting out the fire, she's looking at all the ramifications, all the other things. She's coming up with a much more complex solution that's going to take more time. And the firefighters are really time oriented. She's getting into other people's turfs. She's in charge of worldwide operations. She's getting into finance. She's getting into R&D. She's getting into HR. And ultimately, she's not doing things the way we usually do things. But that, for me, was the big aha was not only is this competency invisible, unarticulated, and unnamed and unvalued, but it's also can be interpreted as being incompetent. And another woman I'd interviewed had created their whole continuous process improvement system. But she wasn't going to be promoted to director. I spoke to her, the vice president of her division, and asked him why she wasn't going to be promoted. Well, she doesn't get along with the other guys. She's always complaining. And I said, well, didn't she design your continuous process improvement system? And he said, yes. I said, well, couldn't her complaining be doing continuous process improvement? And he said, I never thought of it that way. So that's why there's a whole set. I put the framework paper on each of the tables, the whole set of what I call relational competencies that are so valuable. And once taught, both the people that have them, and it can be women, it could be people from more collectivist cultures, it can be other influence. It's not absolute that it's just women. But once taught, that the relational person now has a confidence in their talent and their competency and an ability to teach. Because I always say you need to adopt others to your competency when you sit down in a new group of people. Let them know you can count on me for being a firefighter and looking at all the ramifications. You might think I'm scattered and all over the place, but it all has to do with preventing fires and even producing a second or third generation product up front. Might take a few more weeks, but this is what's possible. So you need to be able to be with confidence and teach others how to expect. And this is what has allowed for collaboration beyond my wildest dreams. And a joy and a belonging between international students that I work with. Also, certainly I've been in workplaces that's been transformed out of this. My students get an A in the class and they get an A in another class because they've applied what they've learned to their collaboration in other workplaces, classrooms and workplaces. And the other really important distinction, although there are lots of them, is how many of you out there like to play devil's advocate? Okay, how many don't like to play devil's advocate? Anyone? Okay, there are usually some people that don't like to play devil's advocate. And what I've identified is that often more relational people, they don't want to have their ideas poked holes in and criticized and shamed. they want to build their ideas. And I called it building a case, and it was actually in a workshop I did with a biotech firm that one of the men said, well, why don't we call it Angel's Advocate? And he was actually playing Angel's Advocate. He was building on the idea. So in doing an exercise on Devil's Advocate and Angel's Advocate, it's amazing the innovations that have come out of this. At the Water Quality Control Board in Sacramento, 2 engineers who had not been able to figure out their problem, 2 men, 2 individualistic people. They played the exercise of Angel's Advocate, and they came up with a solution to a problem that they had not been able to solve. And at NASA, one of the executives who had been concerned that there were no new ideas bubbling up in the organization, and he had even said to me when we were starting the exercise, he said, Benita, we do science here. Devil's advocate is science. And I said, okay, are you willing to do the exercise? And he did the exercise. And at the end of the exercise, he'd done with a senior woman. He said, we had so much fun with all the new ideas bubbling up, playing Angel's Advocate. We didn't even play Devil's Advocate. And they realized they'd created a culture where you had to stand up in front of a firing squad with a new idea. And I had suggested that maybe they want to set up half-baked idea sessions where people could know they could come and have people help build ideas. Now, this also is linked on to what the exercise we had earlier yesterday, or the day before on improv. Instead of yes but, to build. But those are the kinds of competencies that I feel are so important for collaboration. And I welcome your further interest to contact me.
All right. Thank you, Benita. Next, we're going to go to Malika, and she's going to share on engagement as well as a part of the Leadership Renaissance.
All right. Thank you, Paul, first of all, for introducing me. And I'm going to come from this in a different sort of angle as being a middle school lead science teacher currently. I've also had experience being an elementary teacher in the St. Louis region, as Paul had said when he introduced me. I'm happy to be here today, and I just wanted to speak with you all about engagement with not only your students, but how to engage your colleagues as well in a school setting. So one of the things, starting off a little bit about me, like I said, I'm from St. Louis, and since childhood, I've always known that I've wanted to be a teacher. I was very lucky in that sense. So I've been constantly trying to work upon myself and putting myself in different sorts of environments, whether it be tutoring kids. I worked in summer camps for science. I did all sorts of things. I was very fortunate. I have a dad who is a pharmaceutical chemist, and I think that's what sparked my interest in being in the field of science. I also have an aunt who's a microbiologist. So those kinds of experiences as a child, I was exposed to going to the aquarium, being immersed in the St. Louis Zoo that we had nearby, and the science center. All of those things really piqued my interest. So now, currently, after college, I got my master's at WashU, if you're familiar. And there I was given the opportunity to work in an elementary setting, which was great as a student teacher. But then after that, I took it upon myself to really take advantage of all the opportunities that I had around me. Since I grew up in an area that I was very familiar with. I did have connections, but I built upon those connections over time, and I've been able to be like an adjunct professor at St. Louis University, seeing what that was like for some time. And I've also been able to design curriculum. So St. Louis actually built an aquarium, and since I was really interested in marine biology ever since I was little, I really wanted to do something with marine biology. So I took it upon myself to combine or collaborate with teachers all around the area and ask them to join a sort of board or a group, you could say, to collaborate and build a curriculum for the students in the city and the surrounding areas. So I was so interested in sharks and marine biology that I also took it upon myself to bring a dead shark home and dissect it on my parents' dining room table. But that was the way that I was able to immerse myself. And being in the Midwest, we don't have any oceans around us. So I was able to bring some sharks to my students after I learned how to properly dissect a shark. And we were able to do that together, which was really a fun experience that I'll never forget. So my job may sound like a Mary Poppins. I always have something that comes out of a bag, and it's always a mystery, I guess. But that's kind of how I feel about my job. That every day for me, it's almost like going to a theme park, even though there are some, of course, ups and downs in my career. But I have felt that I've really enjoyed what I do. And something that I want to say is that if you want to be a really good educator, you should really immerse yourself in anything and any opportunities that you can get, whether it be something as strange as going to, for instance, I went to a NASA conference recently, but before that, I actually had met an astronaut, Scott Kelly, if you're familiar with him, and he has written a book called Endurance, and it's a really nice book. There's one for a children's version and an adult's version that I would highly recommend. But I was able to meet with him, and I got his business card, and my students actually wrote to him after they read his book, and he wrote back, and that was really something to witness. I also have a student that I still keep in touch with, and I feel like I really engaged her because she knew or she knows she wants to be work at NASA and be an engineer, and I could see that. So during COVID, being the time that it was, and being at home and having to teach and making my parents' basement my classroom, my student, she was really interested in Mars, and there's this whole, expedition going to Mars, and there's a female astronaut that's going to go there. She's a great candidate. So we learned a little bit about her, and then my student, I actually did some research on the side and got that astronaut to come join us at a Zoom lunch. So my student got to meet with her and talk to her, and it was a really exciting moment for her. So, engaging your students is really essential, as we all know, as educators. But also, I would say that now I've moved to sunny California. That's also been my dream. So I always wanted to be a teacher in California. I knew that and made that happen. So, as Bonita was saying, you're accomplishing kind of like your wildest dreams, and I think I have. Some of my colleagues would probably call me crazy, but it's been an amazing ride. And another area that I wanted to focus on and emphasize on is how to engage your colleagues. So right now we're in March, and so it's kind of winding down to the end of the school year. And I've noticed that some of my colleagues, they're getting pretty tired, and they're probably tired of hearing about some of my ideas. But I'm still excited. We had, a beautification day, and I tried to get all the staff involved in that, and we designed a garden for our backspace in our middle school. And just making sure that you constantly are checking yourself and making sure that you are seeing how you can progress even further. That's something that I really try to do on a consistent basis, and not always just settle for this lesson was, it was a good lesson, but you can always improve upon it, and asking your colleagues what they think as well about you. So at the end of the school year, getting feedback is really important, and that makes you become a better educator. That's kind of what I wanted to say about that. And lastly, I kind of wanted to focus on teacher burnout. We know that teacher burnout is real, and we want to make sure that we keep our students engaged and alive through the end of the school year, and not just immersing ourselves, but immersing our colleagues, immersing our students in everything that we do, and further their love for learning. So before we move on to our next person or panelist, I would like to leave you with one quote that I thought would be something very, leaving you with a quote that I thought is very fitting since we're in Las Vegas. And it's by Elvis Presley, who's one of my favorites, and in which he said, "Do something worth remembering." So that's what I would like to leave you all with.
Okay, thank you. Yes, next is Dr. Courtney Gotti, and she's going to share in regards to motivation in the modern workplace.
Thank you, Paul. And thank you to all of our panelists that are up here, too. Much like Malika, I enjoy quotes. So I wanted to actually start with a quote for you all today. It's by former President Eisenhower. And it says, "By leadership, we mean the art of getting someone else to do something that you want done because they want to do it, not because your position of power can compel them to do it." And when I read that, I really reflected for a moment on all of the challenges that as leaders we encounter, right? And sometimes the biggest challenge is just getting people to move forward, whether it be a big step or a small step, right? And we've kind of seen this shift in leadership over the years where we're moving from more of the hierarchical leadership structure to more of a collaborative and empowering leadership structure. And with that, as leaders, we're really having to kind of shift our approaches and how we view leadership and how we work with people. So there's three considerations that I want to provide you guys today to kind of take home and think about as you go back to lead those that you work with. The first one, I think most of us being in education probably have referenced before, is Maslow. We're really good as educators at thinking about those hierarchical needs for our learners. A lot of times we forget that those apply to the people the adults that we lead to, right? They still have those same physiological safety needs as well as that need for self-fulfillment and collaboration and connection with other humans. And if those needs aren't being met, then they're really going to struggle to connect. They're really going to struggle to meet the goals and the performance tasks that you've put forth for them. The next thing would be insight, autonomy, and relatability. Adults are very intrinsically motivated. I know as a teacher, it was great when I could walk into my classroom with a bag of Skittles and all of my fourth graders would like stand at attention and they were ready to go, right? As I moved into more educational leadership, I realized really quickly Skittles were not nearly as effective with adults as they were with fourth graders, unfortunately, right? So instead, I really had to learn to, one, know where each of the people that I was leading, where they stand, what were their needs being met, what did they value, what was important to them, and how could I relate my objectives for them, my expectations for them, to what they value. Because once I could make that connection, that intrinsic motivation kicked in, and they were really able to perform at a level that they maybe hadn't before. And the last thing, I think in education, we really get tied up in performance expectations. It's something that's usually tied to our rubric for our evaluations. And there is a lot of pressure and anxiety sometimes behind that for educators. Anxiety definitely is tied to motivation in some sense, right? And if we think of it as kind of like an inverted curve, if we have too little anxiety, too little pressure, we're bored, we're not engaged, we're completely checked out. If we have too much, we're on the completely other side of that bell curve, right? We're stressed. We are hiding somewhere because we don't want someone to find us. We don't even want to consider the tasks that we have on our list. We're just going to pretend it doesn't exist. If we can find that middle ground where we have that optimal amount of pressure, then we can leverage that to create an environment where people are motivated to continue to move forward. So overall, just as my introduction, I probably would just consider reminding you guys Remember to consider the current state of affairs for your learners and those you lead. Make sure that their needs are being met and you're tying their expectations and concepts to something that they value and that they relate to. And then if you are tying some sort of expectation to that with a timeline or some sort of skill that they have to master, ensure that the amount of pressure that you're putting on that is optimal to make it realistic for them.
Fantastic, fantastic. We still have time left, so what I'd like to do now is that each panelist has given us their takeaways, the things that you need. What is the most important takeaway that you want people to take, Ellie, from your particular discussion?
I'm going to take you through a quick. Oops, may I have that? Sorry. I'm going to take you through a quick lessons we find in nature, so you can take this home away from you. What do you think is the loudest creature in the ocean? Take a guess. Is it a whale? A dolphin? No one's speaking up. Most people think it's a whale or a dolphin, right? You're so close. Yes, we also often think it must be something massive, but no, it's a pistol shrimp. A small, overlooked pistol shrimp that has one normal looking claw and a funny looking claw that's shaped like a boxing glove. When this pistol shrimp senses danger, it traps a bubble with its odd shaped claw. And when it releases it, it travels almost at the speed of the bullet, 62.4 miles an hour. As you might know, sound travels in waves, and it creates heat that's as hot as the sun. So when the shark or the whale comes, the pistol shrimp will trap and release the bubble. It'll kill all the little fish around it for food and stun away all the bigger fish like the whales and the dolphins, and they have no idea what's causing all this racket. Now let's say I am the shrimp's coach. Uh, yeah. How do I avoid my predators? Well, I'm known for being the strongest and the fastest creature in the ocean because that's how I survive. And of course, I'm going to have the shrimp do the same thing. I'm going to have it swim thousands of hours in the ocean, like maybe 100 hours a week, as much as I can. And I think that after 2 months, he's going to be the strongest and the fastest fish in the ocean. What do you think? Will that happen? Yes? No? No, that's right. He's not built that way. Now, one more thing, the pistol shrimp are blind. So how do they survive? Anywhere in nature where there's a pistol shrimp, there's a goby fish that uses his relator talent to bond for life with a pistol shrimp. So the goby fish sees the shark coming and then do a little wiggle. That way he's alerting the shrimp. Goby fish hides behind a rock, and the pistol shrimp will trap and release a bubble to protect them from harm. Now, why this story? You see, leadership is not always visible. We often assume leaders are the ones who might be very talkative, boisterous, have a lot of charisma. They're extroverts. Those are some common ways to observe or spot talent in a leader, but there are really 34 talents that show up globally that are tied to success. The second strengths lesson is that we're not meant to be, play to your strengths and not mine. Do what works for you and not what works for me. Instead of making you swim hours and hours of laps in the ocean, trap and release more bubbles. Thirdly, we are not meant to make this journey alone. Find that person who has the abilities that are not so strong in you, and that way you're going to be much more effective and efficient in all that you do.
Thank you. We're going to get it to a minute because we are kind of running out of time. Just 1
Sure.
minute.
Yeah. So I guess I would like to leave you with not just immersing yourselves, but immersing your students and getting them to become aware on a more global sense. I noticed that this year, my sixth graders, out of just a project that I assigned them, that they are highly interested in learning about different parts of the world that we don't speak about very often. And this created a lot of conversation in my classroom, and even got me interested and intrigued by a lot of these different areas that they wanted to research. So, getting your students aware, creating that global awareness, and giving them a chance to do some independent work as well, and studying different parts of our world is very important so that they can know about our future and how to interact with people on a global level, because that is something that we have to really have a skill in this generation. So I think that's really important to do.
Thank you so much. Give it a minute.
My encouragement is to use the language and teach in order to really contribute to the transformation of the culture, to expand on the appreciation of these competencies and to utilize them in collaboration. You need to teach them, use the language of devil's advocate and angel's advocate, of fire preventer as well as firefighter, and teach people what that looks like. For instance, on a panel at Intuit a while ago, I was talking about the fire preventer and how often they don't show up because what's being looked for is firefighting. And sure enough, one of the women came up to me afterwards and said, just last week, my boss said, he told me that he never hears about my project. And I realized I'm a fire preventer. I need to show him what I'm doing because it doesn't show up like fighting a fire. So that's the kind of thing that can make a difference. It is also giving motivation to people that have been relational leaders and have not had the confidence, not gotten the acknowledgement. And so I really encourage you to use the language and teach it.
Thank you so much. Dr. Courtney?
All right, I think my final piece of advice or information to challenge or charge you all with would be to build relationships with the people that you lead, foster camaraderie, encourage autonomy, and the things that you ask people to do, tie them to some sort of purpose that's important and valuable to them. Because if you can do those things, you're going to create a connection between those people that is going to be really challenging to break. It'll be there when you need it. So.
Thank you. And I'll conclude here with some research that comes from one of my mentors, a report from Brandon Hall Group for 2024. It just came out in January. And when it looks at the most important skills and competencies for leadership needed for effective leadership, they consist of collaboration at 91%, strategic planning at 86%, coaching and mentoring 83%, team development 83%, learning agility 69%, data-driven decision making. Uh, for all of you in here, every one of you in here are leaders, and you're saying, well, I don't have the title to go with. You don't need the title. You have to lead your life. Everyone is a leader. And I used example when I used to work with Mobil Oil Company years ago, and there were people with leader with the title, but everyone in the organization was a leader, the manager and the employees as well. And many people don't know that. And the reason why they don't know it is because no one has told them, but they are. Now, where leadership is going today is not so much the command and control, as an example, leading from the top, do what I say as I do. It's more so that you have to train everyone in the organization. That's what organizations are going now based on the Brandon Hall Group report. And so we have to train everyone to be a leader, including the janitor, contractor, subcontractor, manager, principal, teacher, nurse in the school. Everyone has to be trained in order to be on the same page in order to get things done. And so when we conclude, we're about to conclude now. Before we conclude, I really want to thank a couple of people here. Just one second. Let's see. We have someone by the name of Malika Ramon, Bonita Banducci.
Well, thank you, Paul.
Courtney Gotti, Dr. Courtney, I love to call her doctor,
Thank you.
and then Ellie Tabibian. Yeah, because we actually met virtually on March the 5th. Today is March the 20th, right? I've known them for 15 days, and they are some amazing people. And I honor each and every one of them. And to also to help the people that got us here, I want to thank them as well. And their names, the first person that contacted me about this was Artie Shaw. So if Artie, if you're listening, we want to thank you. She's in a manager delegate relations for Education 2.0, as well as Shawani Swaraj. I messed her name up, but she's also a manager delegate relations. And number one, uh, I also want to let people know that I have a book out called Leadership is Influence. And the report that came out with Brandon Hall Group, I had no idea what was in that report in January, but a lot of it is in this book, Leadership is Influence. And so I want to just let people know that you are all leaders, every one of you. When you look in the mirror in the morning or at night, you're looking at a leader. And if you think you aren't, give me a call. So without further ado, I want to thank everyone here. And I especially want to thank the communication staff in the back. I want to thank the people who are moderating it with the timing, with the hand, the photographers, everyone, because we all make a difference and everyone should be present and accounted for. And I want to thank my Air Force uh, comrade in the back, Devin. I was in the Air Force 20 years, so I have to also acknowledge him and thank him also for his service today and all the other veterans as well that I've seen over the last past days. But thank you for giving me a great experience. And leadership is a journey. And also for employee, it's an employee journey as well. And we know that the employee journey, 92% of all people at every company in the United States is at risk of going to another company because their employee journey is not as good as they want it to be. And mainly because there is a leadership, there is a gap in their skill gap, and they can't get access to the training that they need. So that's something that we should all look at too. And I want to share one last thing because I know I'm on the clock. It's this. Friday morning, I will be at an elementary school talking for career day. And I'm going to tell them everything that you all said. Every speaker, everyone on this stage, and the other stages that were here. And I'm going to share with them the things that I learned. Happy learning, happy teachers, a little bit of everything, a new way to learn. So I'll be sharing that with everyone. So thank you very much. And give these people a round of applause here.
And Paul, if we could just thank you too for your moderation and your leadership as we embarked on this panel discussion. It was great. So
I'm
thank
here
you.
to serve. And this lady here, I looked at her announcing this week, and, and she was awesome. She was awesome. So thank you all and have a great day. Enjoy Education 2.0 for next year. I overpacked again. I did it again. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, panelists, for that enlightening session.